Let me tell you about Smoky Rose, the Tex-Mex barbecue joint that is in the heart of their community over there in East Dallas. It is a terrific, terrific place. When you go to Smoky Rose, you need the burnt ends. Trust me, brisket that melts in your mouth. All their meats are smoked in their wood-burning smoker, low and slow, the right way to bring out the best flavors. And if you want to go the salad route, well, they can help you out there, too. They have several to choose from. They're all loaded with the freshest ingredients. Whatever you choose, you won't go home hungry. You will also not be disappointed. And let us not forget the carefully crafted cocktails. The vodka bar will be open when you go there. Promise you that. They're located in East Dallas, right across the street from the Arboretum. Smoky Rose has the perfect seat for you inside in a large comfy booth or on their patio. They're open for brunch on Sundays, happy hour every day from 3 until 6. They're Smoky Rose, 8602 Garland Road in Dallas. And let's not forget October 11th, 5 till 9, your dark companion will be there. The whole gang will be there. Join your old friends and new hosts from every show on the Sunset Lounge, such as Shippy and Groobs, Beer 30, Sports O'Clock, The Clubhouse, The Ingle Angle, and 2 new shows, Insurance Unhinged and What's Your End Game. And, of course, the Your Dark Companion crew will be there as well. So come see us, Smoky Rose, October 11th from 5 until 9.
Nobody would have thought that I would be the one. Rhyner, sports talk. Baseball, 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 baseball.
Oh, with the big mic. Oh, okay. All right, yeah. Okay, now I get it.
We got a lightning strike, boys. What happened over there, Grego? We had a little lightning strike right outside the window.
All right. Here's a tip for all these Americano League teams.
Wait, you said tip?
Yeah, tip.
Okay.
With a P.
Keep jamming.
The ticket, colon, nothing but a big Gen X jerk-off sake.
This is a cool night or what?
Although somebody would hear that and go, bullshit.
I'm back, bitches.
Hello. It is another episode of Your Dark Companion. Warmest greetings to one and all, no matter where you may be, no matter how or when you may be receiving this podcast transmission. I believe we are live, but in the world of podcasting, everything is live and everything lasts forever. And there is no end.
Yeah.
Michael, it's a pleasure to be here. Longtime fan. We worked together for many years.
Yes, we did.
Half of those I was deathly afraid of you, but now I'm glad that we're good buddies.
Yes, we are good buddies. There is no reason to be afraid of me then or now. And I thank you very much for doing this because you have had quite the career in this game.
Yeah, I feel like I'm an exception to the rule. It's like most people stick around at a gig for a couple of years and then they're off to another market or something happens in corporate radio and they get their heads lopped off and they're on the beach for a while. But knock on wood, this is 37 years now. And I keep telling my wife, this is the last year. They're not bringing me back anymore. But for whatever reason, they just keep bringing me back.
Well, that's because you're good.
All right.
That's because you're really, really good. You are a radio pro through and through, and everybody knows that, man.
Or I just might be cheap.
Well, there's always that. What got you into radio?
Well, you got to go all the way back to when I grew up on the East Coast and I was in high school. And I was fortunate to be neighbors with a girl by the name of Rose Mahoney. She went to Rutgers College. I grew up in central New Jersey. Moved to Dallas after I graduated when I was 17. But Rose worked at WRSU, which was the college station at Rutgers. And her music director at the time was a guy by the name of Matt Pinfield. Does that name ring a bell at all? Matt Pinfield? He was the bald-headed VJ on MTV all those years. He hosted 120 Minutes. At the time, there was nobody cooler in Central Jersey on the radio than Matt Pinfield because he was playing the new wave. He was playing Depeche Mode, Duran Duran, Ultravox, all these bands that kind of changed my life. And I went to school from 79 to 82, and MTV signed on in 81, so I was kind of right in that sweet spot where punk and new wave exploded.
Right.
So when I realized, wait, you can get paid to play cool records on the radio? I feel like, yeah, that's what I want to do.
And that was the music that you listened to when you were like a kid? Or was there stuff before that?
Yes. So I bought all the Rush albums when they came out and the Zeppelin albums. And, you know, I was into classic rock and Southern rock. I listened to a station called WPLJ out of New York City, and they played a wide variety of classic rock. In the early 80s, they went more with a modern rock lean. They would dip their toes into, you know, kind of more of the new wave artists, the crossover artists, you know, stuff like Sniffing the Tears, Driver's Seat. You remember that?
Oh,
one?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Those bands that really weren't classic rock, but they really weren't new wave. They didn't have funny hairstyles yet. But so I was into all that. But when you're a junior in high school and MTV comes on, and you see that there's something besides what the radio is telling you you're supposed to like. I didn't realize at the time it was just British pop music. I thought, wow, these guys look cool. They use synthesizers. They're not, you know, following the norms of music. This is what I want to get into. So with the help of MTV and WRSU, you can look at my graduation photo from 1982 at my high school. Was taken at the beginning of my senior year. My hair is parted down the middle and feathered back. I had the big comb in my back pocket. I looked like a typical, you know, early 80s New Jersey guy with the hair over my ear. It just was a bad look. It was wings. By the end of that year, I looked like John Taylor from Duran Duran. I made the total switch. You know, I was wearing my freak flag, or as you used to say, let your freak flag fly.
Yes.
So that's what I was doing. And then when I moved to Texas, I thought, well, that's all over. But it wasn't true.
Now, what got you down here?
My mom and dad divorced when I was 3. My dad lived in Manhattan. Did you ever see the movie Elf?
Yeah,
Hell yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right. So you know when Elf and the son are bouncing on the beds at Gimbals?
Yes.
Okay, so my dad was financial vice president of Gimbals, believe it or not. He was a very smart guy, went to the Wharton School, and took a job in Dallas in 1980 for a company called Margot's La Mode. Do you remember them in the mall?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so
I
they're
do.
a women's fashion company. I spent the summer with him, my summer break between sophomore and junior year, and I basically laid around the pool. You got to remember, this was summer of 1980. Do you remember summer of 80 in Dallas?
I do remember the summer of 1980. In the summer of 1980, I was living in an upstairs duplex with no air conditioning. And this matters because the summer of 1980 was the hottest summer we have had on record.
Right.
And
So
anybody who experienced it will remember it. You won't forget it.
So as a kid from New Jersey, pasty white, I thought that was the coolest thing ever. My dad lived at Glen Lakes Apartments at 75 and Walnut Hill, and we used to walk across 75 when it was like it was 2 lanes on each side, and they didn't have a big median, and it was like 115 in the afternoon, and I laid around the pool at the apartment complex and watched the most beautiful women walk by. These were Dallas women, and you got to remember, in 1980, Dallas was the center of the universe, right? The
Yes.
number one TV show was
Yes.
Dallas. Urban Cowboy was the number one movie. The Dallas Cowboys were a great team. And again, as a pasty kid from central New Jersey, I had to get out of there. I saw what the future was. It was Dallas. I wanted to move to Dallas. I wanted to go to college to Dallas. And my dad said, well, you know, if you come to Dallas and you go to college here, we're probably going to have to buy you a car. That's all it took. I was, I left my mom and I moved to Dallas, and actually was touch and go for a while because I applied to about 6 different schools. Didn't get accepted anywhere but UT Arlington.
Well, now.
Yes, I am the 3rd, sounds self-serving, but I think 3rd, maybe possibly most famous graduate from UT Arlington. We've got Lou Diamond Phillips. Somebody named Mike Rhyner, I think, is number 2. And
I think you transcend me, and not by just a little bit.
Not at all. But Lou Diamond Phillips definitely number one.
So one day I was in my freshman year at UT Arlington. I was wearing an Ultravox T-shirt, and I was skateboarding to class. And some kid flagged me down and goes, "Oh, hey, you like Ultravox?" I'm like, "Yeah." He had a Clash T-shirt on. This guy was Doug Preuss. He would wind up being my first roommate. But he said, "Hey, if you like that music, you know there's a show on Sunday nights on the Zoo." It's the reason I wore this shirt today. It's called the Rock and Roll Alternative, and George Gimark is the host, and he'll play stuff like Ultravox. I'm like, "You're kidding? I thought moving to Dallas I would never find this music, this MTV music, this WRSU music." And
well, let me tell you, had it not been for him, for George, he would have been right about that.
Right.
I mean, there was nobody as into it at the time, and nobody doing it other than that.
Yeah, well, George is my mentor. If you have to pick one person that really, I've been criticized for trying to kind of pattern my delivery around George, which I'll accept that blame every day of the week. George was doing exactly what I wanted to do, not just working in radio, but also getting to play what he wanted to play.
Yes.
and really feeling like, you're making a difference. We can talk about where I'm at in my career in radio now and 37 years in. But there was a time when I really felt like radio was changing the world. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And that's, I felt like The Ticket was that way when you were on there. I felt like The Freak was that way for a while. There's just some ideas that come along, whether they succeed or not. Another chapter in my history was throwing it all the way to go to L.A. to work for the country's first all techno rave station, which again was changing the world. That didn't succeed. But listening to George really motivated me to not only meet him, but learn more about how to do this thing called radio. Because at UT Arlington, there was no radio station. There was radio courses. There was the Fine Arts Building. It broadcast in the building alone. Mm-hmm. Now they've got an internet station. But in order to get hands-on training in radio at UT Arlington, you had to find a station and go get an internship.
Yes.
And so George Gimark, after doing the Rock and Roll Alternative and before founding The Edge in '89, did a stint at KNON, which was community radio.
Right.
The nurturing biosphere of community radio.
Yes.
And at the time, before The Edge, KNON was really the only place where you could hear, it wasn't even called alternative at the time, but modern rock, the music that you'd see on MTV's, IRS The Cutting Edge or 120 Minutes. So many great shows. Jeff Lyles had a show on KNON. Jeff Webb had a show on KNON. And there was another George that was very instrumental in me getting my big break in radio, and that was George Baum. And George Baum did a show on Saturday afternoons called The Fabulous Chicken Gristle Show. One of the greatest radio names ever. And at night, he was the doorman at the Start Club. And so,
well, now I've never even heard of this.
Oh yeah. So a lot of people, when I talk about George Baum giving me my big break in radio, they conflate that with George Gimark. George Gimark was very good at what he did, and I would work with George at The Edge in the early '90s, part of that first generation 94.5 The Edge crew, right. Which I felt like we were changing the world. But I didn't get my first on-air gig without the help of George Baum. And recently, Jeff Lyles just threw a big anniversary party for the Theater Gallery, which celebrated its 40th anniversary. Theater Gallery was a club in Deep Ellum, which had early shows by the Red Hot Chili Peppers groups. Yeah, saw Bad Brains there. So I was outside the Theater Gallery with my wife Carrie, and we weren't married there. We didn't get married until '89. But I heard this voice over my shoulder, and it was the unmistakable voice of that guy I listened to on Saturday afternoons that hosted the Fabulous Chicken Gristle Show. The guy that was playing Susie and the Banshees and Sisters of Mercy and Deep Cuts by The Cure, but he would also play Eddie Kendricks and random German krautrock. It was just a great, incredible, eclectic mix. And it was George Baum. And I just had the nerve to walk up to George and I go, "Hey, man, I love your show. I listen to it every Saturday, whether I'm grocery shopping, I'm washing the car. I actually take radio classes at UT Arlington. He goes, oh, hey, would you want to come visit, sit in on my show one day? I'm like, heck yeah, I would do that. So, excuse me. The following Saturday, I went to sit in on his show at KNON, wound up taking calls and seeing kind of what radio was all about. The early days of KNON, it was on San Jacinto. This is before it switched to 90.9. It was 89.3. It was in an old crack house on San Jacinto, a mile away from $1 Million Homes and a mile away from crack homes. But George did this fabulous, entertaining show, and I got to witness it. And when it was all over, he said, hey, I want you to meet the program director. And so afterwards, I met the program director, and they said, if you want to volunteer here, we can use help answering phones, doing pledge drives. So I became a fixture at KNON. I know, long story longer. But George Baum one day said, hey, I'm not sure that I want to keep doing this show. It's a lot of commitments on Saturday afternoons. I work at the Start Club. I'm thinking maybe, if anything, I might take a later shift on a weeknight. Would you be interested in taking over my time slot? And you got to understand, nobody just walks into a show at KNON. You got to put your name on a wait list. Usually it's the overnight show that comes available. You got to pitch your show idea. So I was able to take over that time slot on Saturday afternoons, kind of keep doing what George did, though I did more of a industrial dance lean, more of like an EBM, electronic body music of the late 80s, Ministry, Revolting Cocks, coupled with the 4AD ethereal stuff like Cocteau Twins and Dead Can Dance and This Mortal Coil. And I called it Thud Slap. Because that's the noise that the music made. It was like a drum machine. It was a kick and a snare. It was thud slap, right? Thud slap. And that show went from 87 to early 1990 and became the #1 rated show on KNON based on pledge drive and pledge success.
Now, all this time you were all in. You had determined that this is what you wanted to do.
Well, this was my only in. I didn't know about trying to get an internship at another radio station. I felt like this was my opportunity because...
But I mean, the whole radio game, you saw that you were all in on this, huh? That this is what you wanted to do.
Well, I felt that KNON was perfect because I was changing the world, playing what I wanted to play, and I was also able to cut my teeth. The mistake I made, or the benefit, is I recorded every one of those shows. And those shows are archived, and I put them up on my Mixcloud page at JeffK.net. My website is jeffk.net, so my internet handle is JeffK.net. But if you go to my Mixcloud page, you can listen to those shows, those early shows, and I'm horrible. Very nervous, very high-pitched, 1 million miles a minute. But I was able to cut my teeth. Yeah. When bands like Nine Inch Nails came to Dallas for the very first time, Nine Inch Nails opened for the Jesus and Mary chain at the Arcadia Theater. Nobody wanted to interview Trent Reznor. I was playing his stuff. And so I made a request to TVT, the record label, and I got the first radio interview with Trent Reznor ever in Dallas that day. And then I got him to sign some stuff, and I would save that stuff, and I would use that stuff during Pledge Drive. Pledge Drive was a throwaway thing for most DJs on KNON. They'd be whipped by having to beg for money. I didn't like it either, but that's how you were judged and whether you could keep your show. There were no ratings.
Right.
It was community radio. So I would say, hey, I've got an autographed Trent Reznor 12-inch, $100. Or what? Maybe it wasn't that much in 1988. It was $50, and people would light up the phones, and I'd blow the doors off Pledge Drive. And so to me, that seemed easy. Just interview bands, get them to sign stuff, hold back that stuff, use it for Pledge Drive incentives. And then The Edge came on in 1989. George Gimmark launched the station in 89, and I wasn't invited to be on it. I was heartbroken. That was my station. That was commercial radio. That was getting paid to play cool music.
What kind of effort did you make to get into that thing?
Well, there was a whole network going on with George and Larry Nielsen, the original program director, and Steve Allison, the first owner. It was Allison Broadcast Group that signed on The Edge. And I wasn't part of that clique. And I think one of the knocks on me was that I was this industrial dance guy. I think when I first interviewed with Larry Nielsen, I sent him a tape of my show every week for a year before they finally called me in. They must have had somebody quit on him at the last minute to do an overnight, because when I went to interview with him at the Edge, he goes, you can't play Revolting Cocks on our station. I'm like, yeah, I know. I love the Smiths. I love Depeche Mode. I love The Cure. This is what I want to do. He's like, all right, we got a midnight to 6 shift available next Saturday or whatever. I'll have you do that, and we'll go from there. We'll see how you work out. And I never looked back. It was 6 years, and I went from full-time midday host and assistant music director to the mix show guy on Saturday nights doing the Edge Club show, which kind of mirrored the birth of rave culture, and I was playing all those records. And,
right.
And that success there is kind of what launched the next chapter that I mentioned earlier.
Man, I loved the Edge. It was probably my intro to all of that kind of music. I'd always been kind of leery of it. I'm an old guy, and I like the old stuff, and the Doors and all that stuff from back then. And I, as well as many others in my demographic, were leery of all that stuff. It was kind of a new generation, a new grade of people, and a new instrumentation. The sound of it was different, and I was leery of it. But listening to the Edge, blowing by there every now and then, and hearing something I liked, made me hang around for a little while. And before long, I'd completely come to terms with it.
Yeah, well,
and I thought it was really, really cool.
I think, the Dallas-Fort Worth market was unique in that there really wasn't a college radio station per se that had a strong enough signal to cover the market that was playing what at that time was really college radio fare.
Yeah.
That music, that whatever, the European or British pop music, was really only getting embraced on college radio. There were charts at the back of R&R that was a college playlist.
Yeah.
But the Edge signed on, and it was part of the first generation of what would become alternative stations. Now they're looked at as classic alternative, and there's very few of them left. The Edge, God rest its soul. But there was K-Rock in L.A., there's 91X in San Diego, there was BCN in Boston, FNX in Washington, and they all really watched each other's playlists. And if one record came in that kind of bubbled under, they would ask about that.
Mm-hmm.
And, there were regional hits, things that would work in LA on K-Rock that really wouldn't work in Dallas. But that first generation that I call the first generation of the Edge, with George Gamark, Wendy Naylor, Alex Luke, Jerry Lentz, myself, that was pre-grunge. When Nirvana broke in late 91, then that format became a moneymaker. Before that, it really struggled. Before that, you could play several hundred songs. You could play a song and not hear it again for a day. You could have no repeat Thursdays. Mm-hmm. You could do Mondo Block weekends. But when Nirvana broke and the grunge scene hit, and bands like that became money-making entities, it really affected radio, and some would say not for the better.
Well, Nirvana was the tipping point, though.
Well, yes, and it was good from a rating standpoint, right? Because the Edge was the first to embrace Nirvana. I mean, Q102 and the Eagle and those competing stations at the time were latecomers on those bands. They were followers, so the Edge was still seen as a leader. But what happened is certain people in that first generation of Edge, that certain staff members were resistant to tightening playlists and resistant to maybe allowing certain songs on the air that were more mass appeal, per se. Not necessarily the grunge stuff, but more pop leaning.
Like what?
Well, I'm not going to name names, but, George Gamark was let go from the Edge because he really wasn't hip to playing even like kind of pop dance stuff at the time. Do you remember when the Edge started playing Ace of Base?
No,
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. what was the?
I don't think I heard that. I would have been very surprised and rather disappointed by that. And I mean, that's no knock on Ace of Base, but
well, if you look at the times in the early '90s. Songs like Unbelievable by EMF were very popular.
Yeah, now that I remember hearing on there.
Right. So there was kind of like a rhythmic revolution in alternative.
What, you guys think I don't remember this?
I believe you remember.
Okay, all right.
That was a huge song. Who doesn't remember? Yo, Unbelievable.
I'm still giggling about the Ace of Base apology you just made.
So there was the thought that, hey, there are these songs that are breaking at top 40. Can we get away with adding them to the Edge playlist without it seeming like too much of a stretch? And there was an internal battle. And so you had a top 40 mentality take over the Edge, which for a while, I remember when the Edge was number 1, 18 to 34, and Joel Folger was the program director at the time, God rest his soul. And, he took us all out in a limousine, and we celebrated being number 1, 18 to 34. But, I did miss playing XTC and Echo and the Bunnymen.
Yeah.
And, the Violent Femmes. And it comes from my background of wanting to change the world. When you start playing Ace of Base, you are acquiescing to
the world's changing you.
Yeah, or you want to be financially successful, which is great. You have job security and everybody's getting fed and you can charge more for your ad revenue and it's great. But it was different. Let's just say that. It was different.
A departure from the original mission.
Right. And when George left the Edge, it was kind of a sad moment for me.
I bet it was for a lot of people up there too.
Yeah.
Because George was he's still with us and everything. But he's a pretty ride or die type.
Yeah.
And he does he's a trendsetter. He's a trendsetter, and if you follow George, you're going to be riding with him, and you're going to be you're one of his guys.
Yeah. George now does comedy radio. Which is kind of a cutting edge thing to think about now.
It is. I mean, he's always on the edge.
Yeah.
No pun intended there.
I'm going to say, so to speak.
Yeah, if you will. All right, so let's see. Where did we leave off there?
Do we want to keep going through my radio?
Yeah, we do.
All right, so I took the Saturday night mix show that I was doing, Edge Club 94, because it was on 94.5 The Edge. And remember, I was kind of mirroring what was happening in club culture at the time, which was rave music was starting to bubble under. Artists like The Prodigy and the Chemical Brothers and Moby and Fatboy Slim were all starting to get noticed. And when those artists were touring, because I was playing their records on Saturday night on a 100,000-watt blowtorch, that was a big deal, right? And we also had the Lizard Lounge, Don Nedler, who ran the Lizard Lounge and sponsored my show, said, hey, if you're gonna play these artists, do you think we should have these artists perform? I'm like, yes, we definitely should. So the Prodigy's first ever gig was at the Lizard Lounge. If you look at the liner notes on the first 2 albums from the Prodigy, they'll name check Dallas, Jeff K, Don Nedler, Lizard Lounge. So really, the combination of kind of riding that crest with rave culture, coupled with having a venue that would support the artists, really put Dallas on the map as an early unthinkable hub for club and rave culture in America in the early 90s. I mean, if you ask anybody who knows anything about the history of techno or rave or whatever, they will name check. You've got New York, LA, Chicago, then other outliers. Orlando was big, but definitely Dallas for 2 reasons. The radio show on Saturday nights that was actually playing this music, and the club that was supporting the artists that were coming to town. And just like I told you earlier about how these alternative stations networked because they shared playlists, well, all of these alternative stations also had mix shows. You had a guy on K-Rock in LA by the name of Jason Bentley. You had a guy at WBCN in Boston by the name of Liquid Todd. And you also had another guy in LA who started a station called Mars FM. He was also on K-Rock by the name of Swedish Eagle. I don't know if you guys listen to satellite radio.
Yes,
But
yes.
Sirius XM on their first wave channel, Swedish Eagle, is still on there.
I've heard the Swedish Eagle.
Hello, my friends. I am the Swedish Eagle. So Eagle we all used to be on this conference call every week, and for years Eagle kept telling me, Jeff K., my friend, I'm going to get another radio station up and running in LA. And when I do, you are coming out and you are going to be my music director and you're going to have a shift. I'm like, oh, yeah, whatever, Eagle, sure. No, I'm serious. I'm going to make this happen. Okay. So at the top of my game, I was full-time on the edge. I was assistant music director. I was so successful on Saturday nights with the Mix Show. You know, I was doing appearances 5 nights a week. I had endorsements. My daughter was born in 91, so she was 5 years old. Eagle calls me and says, Jeff K., I've got the radio station. Are you coming? And I said, how much does it pay? And are you paying for my move? And what kind of contract do I, all the things you ask.
Sure.
Well, we can't pay for your move and the pay's not great and there's no contracts, but we're going to play Prodigy, Chemical Brothers, Moby, Fatboy Slim, 24 hours a day. This is what you want. I'm like, yeah, it kind of is. And if I'm going to make it anywhere, I'm going to make it in L.A. As we told you earlier, I'm the exception. I've been fortunate to be stable. My current gig with Clear Channel / iHeart, I'm about to celebrate 18 years in one spot. That's crazy.
Hell yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So after 6 years at the Edge, I told my wife, Carrie, I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about chasing this dream to L.A. What do you think? She's like, well, Marcel, our daughter, she's 5. She's young enough. She's probably not going to mind. She doesn't have a lot of friends like she's in high school or whatever. She goes, if you want to do it, let's do it. So I packed up the family and I moved to Agoura, not Beverly, Agoura Hills, which is a suburb north of L.A. It's on the other side of the Santa Monica Mountains. And that, to me, was a stable environment similar to kind of the suburbs of DFW, kind of like a Plano, Frisco.
Right.
Where I could have my wife and daughter and they could be safe. The station was in downtown Santa Monica on 3rd Street. And if you know anything about LA, Agoura Hills to Santa Monica ain't close. You either got to go, and this is going to sound like the Californians, but you got to go down the 101 to the 405 to the 10 to get to Santa Monica, or you could go across the Canaan Dune Road, which is the Santa Monica Mountains, to the one by Pepperdine and take the ocean into. But if you do that, you take your life in your own hands, because I'm sure you've seen in the movies the scenes where the cars are driving on the edges of the highways. That's all Canaan Dune Road.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if the 405 to the 1 to the 10 was all bumper to bumper, I would take that.
Now, I've driven by that Pepperdine.
Yes.
So I'm fairly familiar with that part of the lay of the land, but I realize also that there's a lot more to it than just that.
Exactly. So we launched Groove Radio. That was what it was called, Groove Radio.
Almost a good name.
Yeah. And what's funny is in LA, that totally made sense, because what they were doing, and unbeknownst to me, we really didn't play the rave music that I embraced 24 hours a day. It was kind of day parted, but it was great because I was the music director. I was on from 7 to midnight. I did the Night Groove with Jeff K. And we day parted all the ravey stuff, the harder stuff, after like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. So I got to play all that stuff. During the day, it was more Latin house, more disco house, more stuff that was supposed to appeal to the West Hollywood crowd, if you catch my drift. Mm-hmm. Do you know about West Hollywood, Mike?
I don't know.
Oak Lawn of L.A., if you will. Right.
Feel you.
So, and I like that. To me, that made sense, because here in Dallas, I love the Start Club. I love that house music. I love that culture. I love the fact that one of the most embracing cultures I could find in a club was the alternative lifestyle culture. Mm-hmm. They weren't judgmental. They were embracing. They liked adventurous music. Anyway, so for 18 months, I call it Techno Summer Camp, I got to interview every crucial electronic artist that came to LA. And LA was ground zero from 96 to 98 for the Prodigy, for the Chemical Brothers. I keep using these same bands, but I think these are the biggest of the big that people will recognize. The Mobys, the Fatboy Slims.
Dig deep. You got deep people.
Okay, so here's one you'll like. I got to interview 2 greasy, unwashed French guys what? Before the helmets, before the robots, they went by the name of Daft Punk.
Yes.
And I've got pictures of me with Daft Punk, and I'm wearing Raveralls that people see that picture and they make fun of what I'm wearing more than the fact that I'm standing next to freaking Daft Punk and they're not wearing the robot outfit. But I got to interview Daft Punk, and they did a live mix on The Night Groove. But that was just a Tuesday night. The next night it would be Paul Oakenfold. The next night it would be, the Chemical Brothers. The next night it would be, Lady Miss Keir from Delight would come in. I mean, it was just the most unbelievable 18 months of my life.
Man, that sounds like an incredibly exciting time.
It was. It was just great. The only problem was they couldn't sell it. And the ratings were terrible.
There is
Sound
that.
familiar?
That can happen sometimes.
So,
we've heard that song before.
Yeah. So they pulled the rug out from under us and changed formats 18 months in. And I sent resumes all around L.A. My buddy Jason Bentley, who I told you did the mix show on K-Rock, he also worked at KCRW, which is a great station, much like KXT here. It's NPR.
Right.
And Jason let me fill in for him for a week while he was on vacation. And I thought, okay, Groove Radio didn't work out, but I'm going to stay in L.A. and da-da-da-da. I mean, it took me like 6 months to realize I wasn't going to get a full-time job in L.A. Nobody cared about Jeff K in L.A. So Joel Folger, who was my program director at The Edge, when I basically threw everything away to chase Techno Summer Camp for 18 months, he had moved across town to Susquehanna, and he was the program director at The Zone.
Yes, The Zone.
Now, you had been at the Ticket at that time, right?
Yes.
Because I think when I started at The Zone, it was 98, and the Ticket was already going at that time,
Yes,
right?
yes. We've been going for 4 years.
And that was the building at Reverchon, right?
Yes.
Okay.
By then, we had been sold 3 times. We landed inside the nurturing bosom of Susquehanna, and anybody who was there at that time, I bet you'll agree with this, will tell you that those were about the best years of their career.
Can I just tell you that, Joel said, hey, I don't have a full-time job for you, but if you come on back, at least I can put you to work. And after 6 months of not working in L.A., and I told Carrie, I said, hey, what do you think about going back to Dallas? She's like, do it. So we moved back to Dallas and, worked for Joel at The Zone, which flipped to Merge Radio, which flipped to The Bone. I mean, I wound up working for 3 formats and about 6 program directors before that crashed and burned. But yes, Susquehanna, before being sold to Cumulus, was the best radio company I've ever worked for, I think.
Yes.
I mean, no knock against the company I'm working for now. They take good care of me. But Susquehanna had revenue sharing, which I don't know what yours looks like, and hopefully you haven't had to dig into it. But if it wasn't for that full-time work at Susquehanna with the 401k and the revenue sharing, I might not have a nest egg at this point that, knock on wood, hopefully continues to grow. But I mean, Susquehanna offered benefits to their employees like I've never seen at any other radio company.
And everybody who went through there, no matter whether you were on the air and sales, whatever, if you spent a significant amount of time at Susquehanna, you were taken care of.
Yep.
And anybody who was there will tell you, and I can't say enough good about those people. And one of the vice presidents of Susquehanna, Dave Kennedy, is in the area right now these days. Yeah. I've crossed paths with him online a few weeks ago. And I just want him to know what I think of it and know and understand that everybody who was there at that time thinks the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was sad, at least for, I guess, what they considered the not successfully rated stations, or I called them the not highly, well, no, that's not true. Basically, when they sold to Cumulus, as you know, Cumulus came in, and from my perspective, they wiped out all the highly compensated, not rated talent, which I was one, and they put in their small to medium market talent. What their idea was they didn't have major market stations at that time. You've probably told this story 100 times. And their idea was, now we have major market stations. Now that we've bought Susquehanna, we've got stations in Dallas, Atlanta, San Francisco. A way to kind of maybe go on the cheap, at least at first, is to take some of our smaller to medium market programmers or whatever and give them the opportunity
Right.
in major markets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the name of that PD that started at the Bone? That guy that carried like, maybe we shouldn't talk about him.
No, go for it.
He kind of had like guns and liquor in his trunk and all that. You remember him? Like yeah.
I remember. God, I remember the guy, but I haven't thought of him in years.
Anyway. Yeah, I had to train him to be PD because I was APD at the time because our PD had gotten fired. It was just a horrible time, and I trained him to basically take my job. And then I heard stories about how he, drunk on the air and cursing and had guns and alcohol. We'll not name him, but to me that's kind of the memory of the death of my good times at the 93.3 frequency that was Zone to Merge. I loved Merge. And by the way,
I loved Zone. I loved it all.
Zone was great. It was AAA, lots of Steve Earle and Stevie Ray Vaughan. It was kind of like what KZPS did with Lone Star before they decided to flip that back to KZPS but keep the Lone Star.
Right.
But when they decided to go with this Merge radio thing after the Zone and before the Bone, it was really embracing the Y2K, right? I mean, the year 2000 was here.
Yeah.
It was all about the internet. We had web jammers that were in the studio with us.
Yes, that's right.
As the on-air personality, I would tell these stories, whether it was stories about bands or about pop culture, about technology. And whatever story I was telling, I said, well, my web jammer is putting that up on the website. The handle of Merge Radio 93.3 was Cool Rock Smart Pop. And it was kind of like an alternative / AAA adult alternative format. It was one of the few times that the Edge had a run for its money. They rarely had any competition in the market, but we gave them some for, again, about 18 months to 2 years. But on the website, it said on the top of the webpage, Cool Rock Smart Pop. And if I was talking about something band-oriented, well, you could click on rock to learn more, because that's where my web jammer put the story. Or if it was something about technology and the internet, well, you had to click on smart for that. It was pop culture. Well, you get the idea. So it was a very cool idea that was way ahead of its time. And it was hard to me to relate on the air because at first we were Merge Radio, then it was mergeradio.net because they wanted to push the internet. And then it was Merge Radio 93 FM or 93.3 FM when they realized the .net wasn't helping out in the diaries. So again, it was just an idea, I think, that was way ahead of its time and didn't work out very well. And then we flipped that to Cock Rock 93.3 The Bone. And that was some of the best ratings I ever had in my career. And I had to look myself in the mirror and say, hey, you went from doing cool alternative music that you've already embraced your entire life, and you're going to play Cinderella and Rat. Now, you can either put your foot down and walk away, or you can prove to people that you're a good talent no matter what format you do.
That you're a radio pro.
Yeah. And there was, the need to pay the mortgage and all that too.
Of course, there's those minor
Can
details.
I tell you a funny story? I love him.
If you
for
got
this.
funny stories, you lay them out.
You know
man.
Scott Strong.
Oh yeah.
So Scott Strong was the program director at Merge Radio and The Bone.
The guy with the guns and the alcohol, right?
No, that was not him.
Oh, I'm sorry, Scott.
No. This was the guy that came in and took Scott. When Scott Strong got fired by Susquehanna, I took over as APD and had to train the guns and alcohol guy to take my job.
I know. I just had to throw Scott under the bus for a
Now,
moment.
we love Scott Strong is now the marketing director at Granada Theater.
That's right.
And
yeah.
he is just the nicest. You learn over time that you might be butt heads with a guy, but when you have enough program directors to step back at it and look at this, wide array of who has treated you well or not, Scott Strong was one of the best leaders I've ever had.
He is one of the sweetest guys I've ever known. I remember bringing my young daughter, Jordan, up there when she was very young. He was always just great.
And a
with
great
her.
storyteller.
Yeah, he is.
You guys, you would have him on the ticket, never me. Hey, I realize, my specialty is like
back
talking
in the
up a
bag
30-second
with
Strong.
Scott
I'll hit the post better than anybody, but I get it. Scott Strong can tell a story, whether true or not, I think was Scott's.
There were still good stories.
Yeah, I don't have that gene. All my stories are unfortunately 100% true. I don't lie like some people. But here's the Scott Strong story. So when I was doing Merge Radio before it flipped to Cock Rock, I pushed him for a year to let me do a specialty show. You know, I had done Edge Club on the Edge, I had done Groove Radio, and it had been a while since I got to play the music I wanted to play. And we were playing artists on Merge Radio that had some pretty cool remixes like Dido and Nelly Furtado and artists like that. And I talked Scott ear off about, hey, I want to do a show that's kind of a down-tempo electronica version of what we normally do. We could do it on Sunday nights where it's not rated, where all specialty shows go to die. And he said, all right, well, make me an example show of what you wanted to do. And I put together a show for him, and it was, you know, the remixes or down-tempo ethereal stuff mixed with like Moby's Porcelain, which was a huge record at that time. And he kept putting me off. And then one day, out of the blue, he came to me and he goes, you know what? I think we're going to have you do that show. I'm like, oh my God, I love you. And we started Submerge on Sunday night. Submerge.
Yes.
The hypnotic pulse of modern city life. Which I did steal that from Jason Bentley in LA. He had a show called Metropolis, and I thought that was the coolest line ever. But Sunday nights, I played this kind of head trippy, weed smoky, down-tempo electronica show. Come to find out, he gave me that show the day after he found out we were flipping formats to cock rock. Like, he knew it was the death of Merge Radio, but he knew it wasn't happening for like 6 to 9 months till they fully had it. So you can look at it like he acquiesced and what a jerk giving it to me to know that it was going to die, or what a great thing he did by knowing, hey, the station's going away anyway. I'm going to give Jeff this thing he's always wanted and let him have the time of his life on Sunday nights.
So how do you look at it?
I look at it in the latter. Did it piss me off when we changed formats? Yes. Was that another reason why I had to really ask myself, you know, you're going to go from playing, you know, Moby on Sunday nights to Cinderella and Poison and Rat. But, you know, again, I still have people coming up to this day. I'll bump into people at Stars games, or, you know, I'll bump into people out in public and they go, hey, man, you know, if they don't call me Chef K from the Flashback Cafe on the Edge, they'll say, you know that show you used to do on the Merge, Submerge? I loved that show. We'd stay up every Sunday night and listen to that show. I wish you could do a show like that again. I mean, people, it connected in the 6 to 8 months or whatever that I did it. So, you know,
now this,
another great chapter.
Yes, and this provides us a nice svelte segue into another fascinating chapter of your world. Stars PA guy.
Yes.
When you go to a Dallas Stars hockey game, you'll be edified by the dusky dulcet tones of the great Jeff K on the PA there. How'd you land that?
Yeah. Again, just the poster child for, you know, you always say want to be in the right place at the right time. And I have no business being the public address announcer for the Stars. I mean, let alone the Cowboys. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, you know, the Cowboys.
Yeah, there is that too.
Yeah, the Cowboys are the number one franchise in the world. You'd think they would do like an international search and bring in a public address announcer that's got 30 years experience, but no, Jeff K's public address announcer for the Cowboys and the Stars. You know, I got to pinch myself every day.
Yeah, you're good.
But one led to the other.
Yeah.
You want that story?
Yeah,
Yes.
You bet.
We need stories.
I feel like I'm talking too much.
No,
That's what we do
this
here.
This is about you, Jeff K.
Okay.
We brought you in here to talk and to tell your story.
It's a lot of nervous talking too, because you know, Mike, I love you, and it's just so awesome to be in your scene, man. You're just like you know what?
I'm honored
George
to have
and Mark and you are kind of like, you know, I don't think Dallas really appreciates just how fortunate. I know people tell you how unique the ticket was, and you were very instrumental in that, but just remove yourself from the ticket and what you've meant to a whole generation of radio DJs in Dallas. You know, you're on the can I use the F-bomb?
Yeah,
Sure.
Do
All
it.
right, you're on the fucking Mount Rushmore of Dallas radio DJs. You are, at least mine. You know, you're up there
Well, I
with your
appreciate
Mark,
that.
Chapman, Kid Craddock, Mike Rhyner.
That's very nice of you to say, and I appreciate that.
All right. Well, so if I'm nervous talking too much, cut me off. But
No. You're great. I got you in here for this.
Yes, you should not nervous talk anyway. You know that at every Stars game, He has to come up and say hi.
No, I want him because he's good luck. Every time he's at a Stars game, we win. You're there on the freaking second row, by the way, because you're a OG. I'm just sorry you got to sit next to Bang Guy.
That's all.
No, we love Bang Guy. All right. Anyway, so I told you to start. Where did I grow up? On the East Coast.
Yeah,
New Jersey. Right. So my dad used to take me to New York Rangers games at Madison Square Garden in the 70s. And as a impressionable, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kid, getting to see hockey games at Madison Square Garden was a life changer. Guys like Ron Duguay and John Davidson, Walt Tkachuk.
Yes.
Really, I mean, I used to draw.
I remember the great Walt Tkachuk, as they called him on TV down here.
While other kids were drawing band logos on their notebooks, and I would do that once I got into Duran Duran, Depeche Mode, I do their logos. But before that, I was drawing New York Rangers players on my notebooks. So when I moved to Dallas in '82, that was the end of my hockey love. The Devils didn't come on until '83. That's when they joined the league, and I'd already moved away. So I went, basically a decade without pro hockey in Dallas. There were a couple of games. You might remember the game where Gretzky and Lemieux were supposed to play together at Reunion. And, of course, that was a big deal. I went to that. And anytime there was anything pro hockey related, I was always there. So I was working for The Edge. Remember, we started on The Edge in 90. And by the time the Dallas Stars moved to town in October of 93, I was full-time. I was doing the Flashback Cafe. I was the midday guy on The Edge. And I was talking Stars hockey. I had my pro hockey team back. And I was one of the few full-time music DJs, not talk DJs. There was Chuck Hooperstein and some other folks in town that were embracing Dallas Stars moving to town. But I was one of the few music DJs that really loved Stars hockey. And it also helped that I was a full season ticket holder. So the Stars would come to me whenever they needed to promote something on the air, on The Edge. And that turned into, hey, do you think, could Mike Madonna come on the station and play some records on The Edge? And I'm like, hell yeah. Of course, I had to go ask permission. But I had Mike on the air. And I think for an hour, it was like, oh, my God, man, you're Mike Madonna. And he's like, wow, you get to play Stone Temple Pilots records on the radio. It was like this mutual admiration society. Yeah. So Mike and I became fast friends, and I was a big supporter of the team. So that went on for probably, let's see, they started in 93. I went to LA in 96. I moved back in 98 and became a season ticket holder again in 98. The very next season, they won the Cup. So that timed out perfectly. And then they moved into the new arena in 2005. Or 2001. Sorry, 2001. Mm-hmm. I'm getting ahead of myself. I started in 2005. 2001 to 2005. Maybe they were happy with their game presentation. Maybe they weren't. For whatever reason, Ralph Strand just became very influential with the marketing decisions with the Stars at that time. He had the ear of Jeff Moore, who was our director of marketing. And Ralph Strand just decided, hey, we've got a new arena. What do you think if we bring in, I don't know, like maybe the girl from American Idol to sing the anthem, Selena Ray. She's from Dallas. What do you think about maybe, Jeff K., would you want to consult the music for the Stars? I'm like, yeah, I'd love to consult the music. I love the music. I think, Ty Wubker, the first music director, I think he's a great guy. And, he always plays an XTC song for me. And we always give each other the high five when he does that. I really didn't know what I was walking into when they asked me to consult. And I will just preface this by saying I love Ty Wubker still to this day. I know it is not mutual, and that's unfortunate. I'd like to apologize to Ty Wubker if he still thinks that I stabbed him in the back, but I didn't. What happened, was they brought me in to hang out, and just basically observe the music. And I certainly saw it from Ty's perspective. He knew what he was doing. He won a Stanley Cup with the team. He was responsible for the darkness. He was responsible for the House is Rockin'. He was responsible for, playing the Pantera song when we got it during the Cup run. And a lot of his musical imprints still are on the Stars presentation today. Mm-hmm. problem was I don't think Stars front office was very happy with Ty, or they weren't happy with his. I don't know. He played a lot of stuff I liked. It was just a very hockey-centric presentation. It was, I would say, it was very rock-leaning, and for most of the season, it was almost like the Stars used me to tell Ty how to change to be more pop or more family-friendly. And I felt like on a nightly basis, I was warning Ty more than suggesting after a while that, hey, you know, Tom Hicks owns the team now. He wants a family-friendly presentation. Can you play something a little bit more pop-leaning? And I felt like it was very... and again, I understand completely. There was negative response from Ty. Over that summer, it might have been between 2005, 2006, or 2004, 2005, and there may have been a lockout. The decision was made to relieve Ty of his duties, and I was brought in to be the music director. And so I became the music director for the Dallas Stars in 2005. I was fortunate to be the music director during the All-Star game in 2007. Another fun story that I'll be able to show my granddaughter when she gets a little bit older is the footage of me being lowered from the rafters during the opening sequence.
It's incredible.
On a stage with flames shooting around me, and I'm cutting and scratching "We Will Rock You" by Queen. It's on YouTube if you do a search for Jeff K All-Star. The only problem with it was on Versus. Remember the channel Versus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of it in years, but yeah.
And that was the year Gary Bettman decided to move the All-Star game from the weekend to a Tuesday night, and we were going up directly against American Idol or whatever was on at that. Maybe it was The Bachelor. I think it was American Idol. So it was probably the lowest rated All-Star game in NHL history, the 2007 All-Star game. But the opening sequence on national TV was yours truly being lowered from the rafters with flames shooting all around me. That was fun.
It makes me so happy every time I get to hear Jeff K tell me the story, because working with him so many years, every year around the All-Star game, it would be brought up somehow by either him or someone on Twitter or whatever, and just hear the story, but then getting to watch the video, it's just ridiculous. It makes me so happy.
When they approached me about it, I thought, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And we actually practiced it one night. It was one of the All-Star festivities were over 3 days. And the day before the actual game, I think it was maybe Monday night, we did a full run of it. And I got lowered, and I'm there, and I'm being lowered, and I'm about halfway down, and the song still hasn't started. And I'm waiting there to start scratching, and I'm waiting for my song, which is basically the beats from "We Will Rock You." And I had my backup music director there at the controls, and I'm waiting, and all of a sudden I hear do 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 do, and it's like Semi-Charmed Life. Semi-Charmed Life starts playing, and so I'm like, and this was really before the Twitter blew up, and it was still the time of the chat boards,
right?
And the Dallas Stars chat boards were just lit up with Jeff K sucks, and if you didn't know, Jeff K sucks. But the next night was the one on TV, and it was the All-Star game, and we did it. And right as I came out from underneath the rafters where everybody could see me, the right song started, and I scratched. It was all kind of miming. The song was coming from the system, but it looks dope, man. If you look at it on YouTube, and it's in standard def, which is awesome. But the NHL guys were right. It looked cool. It was about maybe 20 seconds before we went into the other opening where we had who's the artist? Randolph and the Family Band. He was the musical guy that did. Do a Google search there over there, Groobs.
Robert Randolph.
Yeah. Thank you. I promised myself I wouldn't have too many neuron misfires today. That's one. So Robert Randolph and the Family was
I'm crediting myself like crazy for being able to fish that out.
Good for you. Thank you, Mike. So it was 20 seconds of me being lowered from the rafters. Then I said, Dallas, welcome to the NHL All-Star Game. Now we take you to Robert Randolph and the Family Band. That was it. Now my moment in the sun was over. But so that was probably the coolest point of being the music director. And then and there was a time too where our existing PA announcer, the great Bill Ollerman. If you ever went to a Stars game during the Stanley Cup run or even the early days at the new arena, Bill Ollerman was cut from the mold of the voices from God.
Yes.
You know, he was
certainly
your Dallas. You know, just the deeper and you know, there was definitely. I mean, to me, when I think of the Stanley Cup and I think of Stars, I think of Ty Webker and I think of Bill Ollerman. So they'll always have that. But there was a time in those mid to late aughts where I was handling a lot of Bill's marketing reads. You know, as a public address announcer, they want you for the goals, they want you for the penalties, but they also want you to do marketing reads.
Sure.
And there's a difference.
Sure.
So when they took the load off of Bill and they said, Bill, we're just going to have you do kind of more of the in-game stuff, I did the marketing stuff. Hey, Stars fans, you know, be sure to wait around till the end of the game for your chance to win a signed Stars jersey.
Yeah.
And then they thought, well, that sounds pretty good. Would you be interested in doing some game hosting stuff as well? Because we didn't even have a game host at that time. So they moved my setup over to stage 101, where the Ice Girls dance now. So I had my music set up with my computers, but then I was also close on the stage where they do the fan-related contesting. So, you know, I'd put a long song on, or I'd have a guy that was kind of helping me out hit a song, and I'd move away from the desk, and I'd do in-game host stuff. So for a while, it felt like I was doing the one-man band thing. I had the cymbal, and I had the monkey dancing, and I had all that stuff. I was doing multiple things for the Stars. And then we had a new director of game presentation come in. And he looked at me, and he said, so you do the music, and you're in-game host? I go, yeah. He goes, well, we're going to figure out what you do best, and we're just going to have you do that. I'm like, okay, that sounds fine. As long as I can keep working for the Stars, I'm fine. It was determined that I would be a better in-game host than a music director, because the knock on me from some of the feedback he was getting was that my music was too hip for the room. Which, again, go back to earlier in the story, you know, I'll wear that badge proudly. And what's funny is Ty's probably thinking, well, son of a bitch, you know, that's not mainstream. You know, Jeff came in, took over, and now the knock on him is he's, you know, too hip for the room. I mean, I felt like I was playing a lot of pop music, but I think depending on who you talk to, like I wasn't playing country music at that time, which is a big staple now at Stars games. You know, I wasn't doing a lot of sing-along stuff like Shippy does now. And I feel like Shippy's might be the best music director Stars have ever had. No offense, Groobs.
Yeah.
Because of if you look at
You got to take that from him, Shoopy.
No. What the hell does
And I
Jeff
think
know
Groobs
about
knows-
music?
Hey, listen, I wanted to be. I think too, where I was successful as a music guy with the Stars was because I wanted to be Grooves. How often was I emailing you for drops?
A lot.
Yeah,
like when I was
every
with the
day.
Hardline, like I was getting emails from you all the time, and you know, can I get this drop? Can I get that one? Oh, I just, you know, this thing happened at the last game. Can you get this? Or, when we were talking with George Dunham about giving away the taco goal coupons.
Yep.
And he said taco period. You're like, Groups, can you send me that? I'm going to play it next game. And I remember we got the audio of it the next day, and we're all freaking out because Jeff K played taco period at a game.
And all the norm drops and
Yeah.
everything.
And
so-
I feel like Groob started the sing-along.
Okay. I agree. I feel, though, what Shippy has done is
Shippy expanded it majorly.
He has.
Yeah, Shippy is able to take the expectations of the organization and still put his own imprint on them and still do it in a way that keeps the fans and the organization happy. It was hard for me to straddle that line. It really was. And I mean, I don't know what your feeling is, Groobs, but I mean, I feel like
Screw him, Groobs.
No, I love
I think-
Shippy.
Tell
But
Shippy
no,
he's
like
out on your show.
Groobs,
You know what, he's gone.
I always feel like kind of you always felt like you were a fish out of water with the Stars. Is that fair?
a bit. Like I definitely had fun with it, and I think for me, luckily having at the time Jason Danby for most of my tenure as the game presentation director, he did a pretty good job of isolating me from the organization's thoughts and all that. Where
Right.
it all filtered through him,
Right.
you know, and he would have
he
his
was
feedback.
also a
he would,
weird one, and we were doing a lot of weird jumbotron.
Yes.
And I would say weird affectionately,
Oh,
like that's
it's very
really,
affectionate.
I mean, other teams around the league were scratching their heads. What are the Stars doing? And what is that stuff on their Jumbotron? And all that was really coming from the mind of Danby.
Yeah.
So your uniqueness was an extension of Danby, and he, like a knock on you was kind of a knock on him. So he really
but we got along. We got along really well, and did have enough similarities in our thoughts. And I think me being the quote unquote fish out of water, being, I liked hockey, but you especially know, Jeff. You basically mentored me the first 7 years I was there. Helping me figure out what the hell does this mean, or what did the ref just signal, or all that stuff. And so being able to just go with that, once I finally did hit a certain comfort level of like, look, we get to be a little bit weird with our presentation, we get to be different. I'm not trying to be the hockey music guy, like you've kind of said, where but we're also not trying to even necessarily be the family-friendly music at the time. Like,
well, it was always the non-traditional hockey market was going to have a non-traditional presentation.
And we went super non-traditional with me and Danby. And I think before and after that, there's been different mixes of both. Like, you brought in, I know Ty Wupker used a fair amount of drops. I don't know how many he had.
Right.
I know I sent you an ass ton, and then you grabbed quite a few of your own and all that. And then I think Shippy's kind of been able to meld all that together. And, the sing-alongs, is crowd participation. That's what you want. And he's got a great grasp of, more of the current music, of how to mix. I never learned how to mix.
Right.
So there's all these different things that I think Shippy's been able to grab from each DJ, and, grabbing from other DJs around the, league, sports, whatever. And then, he's a Stars fan, diehard Stars fan. Combining all that with, I was going to say at some point during this episode, your insane music knowledge. Like, I've told Becca, I've told Shippy, I've told everybody, like, getting to work with you, having the point-to-point conversations throughout games and all that, where even if you knew that it would basically be impossible to even create the drop itself or the music cut or whatever and actually use it, you would throw out all these great little ideas that just, you weren't trying to show off because it was just to me, of just these different, the way your brain fires with music is incredible. And like, I kind of wish that when I was with the Stars that I had asked you more about how you do listen to music, how, to be that well versed in so many different genres and artists, and to know the lyrics so deeply, to know all that stuff about any particular song and artist. Like, I know there's a lot of people who listen to music, and, I don't know where you would rank yourself among, in terms of music knowledge, but just the diversity of it, I think, is just insane. And it feels like you've always been on, pun intended, the cutting edge of so many artists. Like, we were talking about the Lemon Twigs coming to town, and I remember, when we were working together, they had just started. They were 18 and 20 or something years old.
Yeah, I think like 14 and 16.
Yeah, you're right. And just the fact that you are able to find these artists and all that, if you don't mind, I'd like to get a little insight on how the hell you, over the years, with technology changing, I'd like to think it's easier now to find artists on Spotify, but there's also so many more on Spotify. Or just, was it just going to record stores all the time? Was it just always looking for random artists and just giving it a chance? Was it word of mouth, or
how do you find them on Spotify?
Yeah.
I mean, I will find them and then go to Spotify to listen to them.
Yeah.
But I don't much know how to find them on Spotify.
Yeah. You know what's weird is that's always been the conundrum, right? My wife says, like, you should write a book, right? You got so many great chapters in your life. I'm like, yeah, but then I got to remember. I can't remember what happened 2 weeks ago. But when it comes to music, for whatever reason,
you wait.
that neuron seems to fire still pretty sharply. But, am I the hockey guy? Am I the football guy? Am I the rave guy? Am I the Am I the classic rock guy?
Man, you are all things.
I'm just a fan of sports and music.
You're all things to all people.
And I don't want to have to work for a living.
You're a music historian. And you are a Dallas music scene historian for those of us who have always been here and listened to you here. But yeah, you're a great PA guy. Yeah. I love that you're at the Stars because I'm a season ticket holder. I care. But you're a music historian.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's amazing the depth of knowledge that you have, and maybe because you like everything I like, but you know so much outside of what I like.
Well, if you follow me on social media, especially Instagram, and I credit Instagram now with kind of like my go-to source for a lot of stuff. You're going to see a lot of album anniversaries, a lot of rock birthdays. Today's the anniversary of the passing of Tom Petty.
Yes, that's right.
And today's also Sting's birthday. You can see the photos of me singing with Sting during the Merge Radio years. We never told that story. But I think that the reason I do that stuff, the reason I constantly hit you with whatever anniversary it is for an album on any given day, is because it forces me and hopefully people that follow me to remember that particular album. Yes, it's great that the album turns 38 today or 40 or whatever, or classic rocker Sting is 73. Oh my God! But what it does is it puts that album artwork and it puts that sound from that album top of mind for you. And you may forget just how great a particular album is or was until you see that, oh yeah, Jeff K's celebrating the anniversary. So what I do is it helps me exercise that memory muscle of a particular album or a particular rocker. And it forces me to take a moment and maybe listen to a playlist from that artist or appreciate that album. So that's why I do the daily album anniversaries. Yeah. And, as a classic rock DJ, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's easy content in a world of where you're constantly being pressured to create content on social media.
Of course.
But, hey, look, no, I put Sting's birthday and the album, and it's Tom Petty's anniversary of his passing. I did my social media work for the day. But, again, it just allows people to remember. And I think that's important. If we don't remember, then we forget. And there's a lot of great music that either gets forgotten or those radio stations aren't around anymore. And we are in a world where people are forgetting about commercial radio or the lowest common denominator radio, where you got to sit through commercials. People are creating playlists. People are listening to streaming. They're listening to satellite. I think iHeart does a great job with the iHeartRadio app, and there's ways that you can create playlists and you can find your favorite artists on the app. When it comes to a band like the Lemon Twigs, I got to credit Elton John. Elton John does a radio show on Beats Radio, I think. Apple, I think he shows on Beats Radio 1 or whatever it's called. Mm-hmm. And so Elton John posted on his Instagram feed back in, 2016, I think, 2015. Hey, coming up on this week's radio show, great new band called the Lemon Twigs. Here's a snippet of their song, These Words, which was their first hit, or semi-hit. Of course, it didn't hurt that their first album was on 4AD. I mentioned 4AD earlier as the label that featured a lot of bands I used to play on Thud Slap, like the Cocteau Twins and This Mortal Coil. So I thought, wow, it's a band on 4AD, and Elton John likes them. Let me listen to them. And if you go watch the video for These Words by the Lemon Twigs, you're going to see a couple of young kids. They're brothers, the Daddario brothers out of Long Island. Their dad was kind of a semi-successful, some would say failed musician in the 70s, Ronnie Daddario. But these kids are some of the most talented musicians and songwriters you'll ever see. And that song, These Words, was one of the most perfect Baroque pop songs in the vein of Queen meets the Beatles meets the Beach Boys, the three things that I love. And their dad raised them on those albums. As teenagers, their working knowledge of the history of classic rock, thanks to their dad, was second to none. The oldest brother was a Broadway star when he was just barely a teenager. The youngest brother was in some Hollywood movies. They're just super talented, and they've gone through some different formations and ideas as the Lemon Twigs. Their second album was a concept album about a monkey who went to high school and was ostracized and wound up burning down the school. And not a lot of people understood it or got it, but in the same vein as kind of Bat Out of Hell by Meatloaf.
Right.
I look back at it as a masterpiece, and I think one day they're going to wind up playing that album in its entirety at their concerts. And they're now, 10 years on, and they're being still heralded by critics. They're doing a European tour now, and the tour is sold out in places like London and Paris. Here in Dallas, they're going to play Deep Ellum Art Company on the 24th, I believe.
Yes.
Is that right, Groups? Last year they played there. It was their first ever time in Dallas, and I think there may have been 75 people there. So it was a little embarrassing, but it was great because I got to talk to them and be right up front. I suspect this time there'll be a few more people, and I'm hoping Dallas shows up. For those people that say rock and roll is dead, or where's the next generation making music as creative and as genuine, yet in the pop vein as the Beatles, as the Beach Boys, Todd Rundgren, if you will.
Thank you.
The Lemon Twigs are your answer. Mike, I really would like you to go to Spotify and force yourself to listen to the Lemon Twigs.
On your recommendation, I certainly will.
I think you would like them too.
I mean, I think anybody who is a music fan, I mean, they've been on Jimmy Kimmel, they've been on Jimmy Fallon. Questlove is a huge fan of the Lemon Twigs. They're kind of like a musician's favorite band.
Yeah.
And it's sad because they fall through the cracks now because, again, they're kids. They're not kids. They're in their early 20s now, making music that reminds people of an era that kind of harkens back to the early 70s, like 71 to 73.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome. I think we need more of that in new music today. And they don't do it in a pastiche kind of way. They're not like, oh God, here goes another neuron misfire. Groups, who's the band we saw together at the House of Blues?
Greta Van Fleet.
Greta Van Fleet, who get criticized for just being Led Zeppelin sound-alikes. Yeah, the Lemon Twigs are not Beach Boys sound-alikes. They're not Beatles sound-alikes. They learned about those bands, and they incorporate those bands in their songwriting. They are so creative, and they are so well-structured and very surprising in a way, even like a Difford and Tilbrook of Squeeze.
Yeah.
Just their couplets and their phrases and their bridges. A lot of bands these days will write songs without a bridge. And the Lemon Twigs write a kick-ass hook, and then there's like a second and third hook in the song. So enough about the Lemon Twigs, but that's how I got into them, was just scrolling Instagram one day, and Elton John, who I follow, recommended this band called the Lemon Twigs, and great name, great look in the video, and the song to me reminded me of kind of my... And here's young kids making music that sounds like... stuff that's influenced by the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and Queen. Are you kidding me? So that's the Lemon Twig story.
Nice.
You certainly have not disappointed today. You
Well,
really have not. But there's one other thing I got to get into with you.
Yes, sir.
Because it's something you and I have in common.
I was hoping we'd talk about it.
How do you feel about salami?
Yes.
You left too perfect of a timing.
It has nothing to do with salami, but we are both girl granddads.
That's right.
These days.
We're both new granddads.
Yes.
How awesome is life these days, Mike?
Incredible. Just incredible.
Your granddaughter
Yes.
is how old?
Almost 9 months.
Okay, mine just turned 9 months. So I remember, was yours born on Christmas? No.
No,
She was born on
end of January.
end of January.
Oh,
yeah.
I see. Okay. So, all right. So it's...
All right, maybe it's more like 8 months.
8
8
months.
months.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, mine just turned... Yeah, so she was 9 months on the 27th of September. Born December 27th. So we've got that conundrum of Christmas, 2 days later, it's the birthday. What do you do? Do you do the half-year birthday and all that? That's my daughter's problem.
Yeah.
Either way, I'm just going to love on her and give her lots of snuggles. She's awesome. Her name is Olivia Jane, and she's the light of my life, and she's just the cutest thing ever. And if you also follow me on Instagram, you'll get a lot of content of my Blue Merle Pomeranian, who has one blue eye by the name of Bowie, just like his namesake. Mm-hmm. He also has his own Instagram feed, Bowie Pomeranian. But Bowie, he's fun-sized Pomeranian. He's a Blue Merle, so he's not the little yippy dog Pomeranian. He's bigger. And with the right toy, the right ball, he'll do backflips. Like you can throw the ball up and he'll jump and flip. So Olivia really wasn't, she was just being a normal baby and just smiling and cooing and whatever. So we brought her over to my house, and Bowie was there, and she was very interested in Bowie. And I took the ball, and I thought, I'll show Olivia what Bowie does. And I threw the ball up, and Bowie did his backflip for the ball. And she cackled and laughed like we had never heard before. Like we all stopped and got our phones out and was like, do that again, do that again. And so, yes, Bowie has discovered, that's the laugh. To a T, Grooves.
I recorded it.
So Bowie's found his new calling in life as he has been put on this planet to make Olivia laugh. And
all right,
boy, does she laugh.
Let me ask you one more thing about this. Let me tell you what people told me was about to happen.
Yes, sir.
A lot of people told me that this is going to change your world, that you've never experienced anything like what you're going to experience being a granddad. And I thought, well, okay, I guess,
Right.
I've been a dad, had Jordan, raised Jordan and everything, and I guess it's all right. But now that it's here, I see exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
There is nothing like this.
I still feel like we're kind of still on the precipice. I don't know. And what is your grandbaby's name again?
Lane.
Lane. That's a beautiful name.
The lovely Miss Lane.
The lovely Miss Lane. I call mine Little O. Hashtag Little O for Olivia. And what's so funny, a quick aside, is that my daughter refused to tell us the baby name. Like we wanted to get cool stuff for the room or like clothes and personalized stuff. She's like, no, I'm not going to tell you. You're going to criticize. And I'm like, no, we love you. We're going to love the baby's name. Because, well, we've got several names. I'm like, well, tell us this. No, we're not going to tell until the baby's born. We want to meet the baby first before we give it a name. I'm like, okay, I respect that. And, my wife and I are like, oh my God, the baby's going to get a crazy ass name. That's all right. We named our daughter Marcel, gave her a female spelling. It's not a usual name. So if she wants to name her baby something out there unique, we're going to embrace it. In fact, I think things skip a generation in life where I'm more into music and pop culture, and I used to have like weird hairstyles. My daughter was very by the book. She was a straight A student. She went to Texas A&M. She became a veterinarian, a veterinary specialist. I feel like Olivia is going to be the one with the purple hair.
Right, right.
Papa K, tell me how to mix. I can't wait for that. So the baby's born, and we get the big name reveal. It's the most popular girl's name over the last 5 years. Nothing wrong. Olivia, I love it, but what you had to wait? Like, I waited 6 months and that, Olivia? Okay, great.
And you went with the most popular name. You wait 6 months and you go with the most popular name.
Yes.
Wow. I have an
because
Oliver.
Of like Olivia Rodrigo or whatever.
Yeah. I love Olivia, and I have an Oliver, and I think that's fantastic.
Oh, I'm not saying I don't love it. I just, I just thought, well, she's holding out on us because it's going to be some name she's really going to think we're not going to like.
Yes.
Apple. Exactly.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
So, no, and I was going to say, I really feel like still we're on the precipice, Mike, because Olivia has yet to talk. She's not walking yet. I mean, she'll give me those eyes and it melts my heart. But I still feel like, man, the best is yet to come. You know, where she says, Papa K, come play with me, or Papa K, let's go do this, or Papa K, what is that? The lemon twigs. That's
yeah.
Okay, y'all have to in the next 6 months, it's gonna get crazy because my niece just turned 16 months.
Yeah.
I guess she's really close to that, and she's obsessed with my dad.
Ooh.
Like, obsessed. Poppy,
Nice.
Poppy. His name's Poppy, and that is her favorite word to say is Poppy, and she, he is in a room and she wants to be with him.
Aw.
So y'all are probably gonna get mad.
What does Lane call you?
She's going to call me Pops.
Aw.
I let Jordan pick.
Yeah.
And she said Pops. So Pops it is.
We like
Well,
a good Pops.
When Carrie and I used to go to the Stark Club back in the day, I wouldn't say we were a generation older than most at the time, but we definitely weren't just old enough to get in the club. By the late 80s, I was late 20s, pushing 30. They used to give Carrie and I the nickname of Papa K and Mama K.
I like it.
Papa K and Mama K. So my son-in-law's father, his name's David. Their last name also begins with a K. He wants to go with K-pop. So I'm like, fine, you keep that. K-pop. Awesome. I'm going with Papa K, because that's what they used to call me. Carrie's going with Mimi. She likes Mimi. So that's what she's going to be, Mimi.
Sweet.
And what's funny, she shows up with that bright orange hair, and Olivia's eyes just go, whoa. So she knows when Papa K and Mimi show up. So I've always got the crazy band shirts on, like she sees Robert Smith from The Cure, or she'll see, like I got a Hoodoo Guru shirt at the concert, and it's got like a dinosaur on it. And so I always make sure I wear like cool band shirts so she has something to look at.
Man, you are a trip.
Well, Michael,
you really are. I can't thank you enough for doing this.
I want to ask him about something.
Okay.
Because it's kind of relevant just to something we just did. But in that early point of MTV, they had the great band Devo, the DEVO-lution.
Yes, Gerald Casal, right? The other night.
Yes. So we had him on. He's hilarious.
I know. I watched.
So much fun. We had such a great time with him. They got to go and do the meet and greet.
Didn't George Gamark MC it? The event? Wasn't he? I thought he was there at the theater.
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think I saw him there that night. I was surprised.
Because I thought he was supposed to go to the theater gallery thing, but...
Okay, there were 3 days of events.
Oh, okay.
So he may have been there for when they showed the actual documentary, which was at Sundance this year.
What event happened Saturday night?
That was Saturday.
The movie.
Saturday was the movie.
I think
Sunday was
there
the
for
meet and greet, and he got his award.
Yeah, he wasn't there
and
for that.
They were able to go to the meet and greet, and he was fantastic to them and gave them his time while there was a line behind them, but thanked them for having him on. And that was great. But gosh, he was so wonderful. But what do you really think overall? I guess you may not have seen the documentary unless you've gotten a screening, but
I haven't seen it yet, but I look forward to it.
What do you think about Devo?
I love Devo. Devo's always kind of been on that branch of classic alternative that I never bought the albums, but I loved everything that I heard, and I loved the ideal. Didn't really understand the concept of DEVO-lution until I was a little bit older. I think Mark Mothersbaugh is a genius. They've soundtracked, or he's soundtracked a bunch of great TV shows and movies over the years. And their music is very catchy, but yet very subversive.
Yeah.
It's very.
That's a great way to put it.
Meant to make you think, to make you rebel, and while you shake your ass at the same time. Now, much along the same lines as kind of like the B-52s, Oingo Boingo. It's easy to kind of write those bands off as just kind of being like hairstyles and crazy colors, or weird cone hats or whatever, but there's a lot going on under the surface if you just take a look or listen.
So what do you think about, because I'm a weird punk chick, but what do you think about the entire, Devo was the end probably of new bands, new stuff as punk spread across the U.S. And then it was like very quickly we go into post-punk and we have the Talking Heads.
Yeah. Talking Heads were
incredible.
They were there at the birth of punk. They were one of the first new wave kind of rock bands to be included.
Yes, but they stayed in a new wave kind of thing, and punk did not absorb them the same way.
Right, they weren't 3 chords in a cloud of dust.
No, they were not.
Right? Yeah,
and they didn't have the hairdo and the safety pins.
Well, he was a trip to visit with, for sure.
He looked like he enjoyed being with you. You know what? What's so great about you, Mike, and I think when people sit down to get an interview, a lot of times they'll be greeted with guys like me, guys that over-research or maybe, crack that radio voice to ask them their first question. But when I watched Gerald Casal with you, or what you put out on the internet, that whole Devo thing, man, do you ever get people just wondering, what in the heck was your trip, man? You know what I mean? And he was just like, this guy is awesome. I will open up to this guy.
Well,
and that's what you do.
The reality is I was not terribly into all that at that time.
Right.
And I kind of viewed them as more novelty act than anything else and didn't take them very seriously, but I do now.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. But I just wonder how many
shout
times they've been asked, what's your trip?
Yeah. By the way, shout out to the great Bart Weiss for helping me with that interview.
Bart Weiss, video bar guy?
Yeah, the video bar guy.
Did you ever go to On the Air?
Yeah,
before the video bar?
Yeah.
So the first time The Cure played Dallas was at the Arcadia Theater on Greenville, and it's legendary. After the show, Robert Smith walked across the street to On the Air, and if you were there, you got to have like drinks with Robert Smith the first time.
Wow.
He was in Dallas. Yeah.
Boy, the Arcadia was great.
Yeah. Another God rest its soul. We used to do Retrocadia Sunday nights on the Edge. You remember that? Yeah,
I do. Jeff K., you're a trip, man. You are a trip.
That's my trip, and I'm sticking to it.
And I cannot thank you enough for doing this.
Well, I will see you at a Dallas Stars game very soon, won't I?
You certainly will.
I mean, if we need a win, you better be there.
I will be there. I will be there.
Regardless of whether Bang Guy's in his seat or not.
I will be there. I will absolutely be there.
And look for Shippy and Groove's winners occasionally throughout this.
I saw that.
Yes.
That was great.
Throughout this season, we're going to have some winners sitting in those seats down there in the second row.
I will say this, if you follow hockey, you know that a lot of teams that win the Stanley Cup get so close and don't succeed and then take that next step. And the thought around the league is the Dallas Stars have been to the Western Conference Final 2 years in a row. If there's any team that's on the precipice of taking that next step, by golly, it's the Dallas Stars. And just, another team that winds up winning a ring after Grooves leaves is fine with me.
I'll accept it too.
Sorry.
That's fair.
Listen, Ty Wubker got a ring in his 6th season. So did Bill Allerman. I am coming up on, this is my 19th season with the Stars. It'll be 20 years in 2025. And I'm still waiting for a ring. We won't even get into the Cowboys.
They're going to get you one.
You are due.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You'll never
don't
get
worry
a Super
about the
Bowl
Cowboys.
ring,
Stars will get you there before the Cowboys will.
They got you.
Amen.
Jeff K., thank you. Shoopy, thank you. Thanks to everybody out there by the channel. Let me remind you one more time about what we got coming up here at Smoky Rose. Like on October 11th from 5 until 9. We will all be out there. And you can come by, say hi to everybody. We would love to see you. Every show from the Sunset Lounge is going to be there, such as Shippy and Grooves, Beer 30 Sports O'Clock, The Clubhouse, The Ingle Angle, and new shows like Insurance Unhinged, What's Your End Game? And, of course, everybody from Your Dark Companion. We would love to see you out there at the Tex-Mex barbecue joint known as Smoky Rose in the heart of East Dallas. You need the burnt ends. You may not know this, but you do need the burnt ends. Believe me when I tell you this. It is brisket that melts in your mouth. All their meats are smoked in their wood-burning smokers, low and slow. The right way to do this to bring out all the greatness that's in there. And if you want to go the salad route, they can do that. They got several to choose from. They're all loaded with fresh ingredients. Whatever you choose, you will not go home country, or maybe you'll go home country. Take two in 3,
We're live.
2, 1. You won't go home hungry, okay? Hungry, not country. Hungry. Also, don't forget to grab a carefully crafted cocktail, and the vodka bar will be open. They are located right across the street from the Arboretum, 8602 Garland Road. They got the perfect seat for you. They're open for brunch on Sundays and happy hour from 3 until 6. Come see us October 11th at Smoky Rose. Peace out.
All right. I'm gonna go take my pants off.
Your Dark Companion is a Stolen Water Media presentation.